I just want to recenter the focus on the bill, as including the bill. One question, and I see your hand, James Lindsay. One question we get is, or one attack that we're getting is this bill. This bill undermines the freedom of speech. So let's, if we can incorporate that into the discussion, that would be helpful for the reps that are listening. Mr. Lindsay, Dr. Lindsay, would you like to go?
Yeah, please. I can speak to that. Let me just jump in and chat about whether this is actually a plot to undermine America and what it's really about. I want to read to you a very short section, and I just mean a couple sentences from Herbert Marcuse's 1969 essay called An Essay on Liberation, where he tells you what the point of their project is. And Herbert Marcuse was the PhD advisor to Angela Davis, who's working in the prison abolition movement and works with critical race theory now. Just as a little background, just a couple sentences. Be able to overrate the present chances of these forces, but the facts are there, facts which will not only the symbols, but also the embodiment of hope. They confront the critical theory of society. So critical race theory is a critical theory of society with the task of re-examining the prospects for the emergence of a socialist society qualitatively different from existing societies, the task of redefining socialism and its preconditions. And he says that this all follows a great refusal of the capitalist society, the proper noun that he uses a lot. But as far as this really is a plot to undermine America, as Mike Gonzalez pointed out. But as far as the free speech issue goes, it's very important to understand that this is not a legitimate complaint that they're making, because the bill has provisions, if it mirrors, to the degree that it mirrors the executive order issued by President Trump, to allow the teaching of critical race theory, if it's taught as one theory among many, not as uncontested fact. It allows for diversity training, racial sensitivity training, so long as they don't rely on these granular level divisive tenets, which Representative Ammon pointed out, ban the certain practices of critical race theory, but if you read them, they also ban practices that would be of white supremacy and of patriarchy and institutionalized misogyny as well. In other words, this bill is a reiteration of some of the key things that are happening within the civil rights law. It's a little bit ironic that they bring up a free speech defense for this, seeing as I told you, the critical race theory itself is openly critical and skeptical of the idea of rights. On page 23 of a book titled Critical Race Theory by Richard Delgado and Jean Stefanczyk, they tell you that they are openly skeptical of the idea of rights. On page 3, they tell you that they call into question equality theory and the neutral principles of constitutional law. So you literally have them saying that they are not interested in rights, but they're going to use rights to their claim to rights to defend their right to destroy rights. Yeah. That's literally their project, and it's in their own words, and the citations are there, pages 23 and 3 in this book that is titled Critical Race Theory. That said, like I said, the bill actually allows for diversity training, racial sensitivity training, inclusion training, teaching critical race theory as an academic subject, but not as uncontested facts, so long as it doesn't lead with these and treat these divisive concepts as uncontested fact. Therefore, it's consistent already with free speech. It also is consistent with academic freedom for people in colleges that care about this. This comes out of this is only addressing people that are teaching this stuff on taxpayer money as well. So it doesn't infringe private citizens' rights to do this. This is a question of what the state is allowed to do and not allowed to do. It's a reiteration of civil rights. You saw the thing from Coca-Cola that Dr. Carlin shared, and it explicitly scapegoats the white race very clearly there. Racial scapegoating is one of the divisive tenets that's not allowed. Another very important that freedom of speech includes not just the freedom to be able to speak, but also the freedom not to be compelled, especially by the state, to speak. So if you're in a workplace training like Chris Rufo's detailed, or that Carlin pointed out, and they compel you to say that you are complicit in racism, systemic racism, as a white person, that is compelled speech. The state is compelling that speech at that point. So they are the ones that are actually bidding to violate the First Amendment by hiding behind a bogus claim that their First Amendment rights would be violated. Secondly, there's freedom of conscience, the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment imply freedom of conscience. It's not a strict argument since critical race theory is not deemed a religion, but one should be able to have the freedom of conscience to assess issues of race and racism on one's own terms and not to have those dictated by the state. That's, of course, a little bit of a weaker argument, but most Americans believe in equality theory. They believe in Martin Luther King's vision of colorblind judgment by character, not by color of skin. And to be told that they now have to think differently on the taxpayer dime seems to be a violation of that. And if those people happen to be Christians, it violates, depending on their Christian faith, which of course there are many different ways that can be done. But I've spoken with a Christian attorney about this, and he said he's hungry to start suing. So watch out. It violates the First Amendment right to not be compelled in your religion by your employer, especially when that employer is a state. Because, for example, Christianity contains the idea of neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, etc., all one in Christ Jesus. And therefore, it is a religious tenet of Christianity not to judge by the color of one's skin, not to racially scapegoat, stereotype, or discriminate. Whether Christians have lived up to that or not, they do have the ability to claim their religious freedom not to be told that they have to think differently about race and to think in racialized terms if they so choose. So there are a number of ways in which this is actually the claim that it violates their free speech, while that might be something a lawyer could nitpick in the language. And I know a lawyer named David Pivtorek who knows how to get around that injunction that was filed in Northern California if we need to tweak the language or whatever.
That deals with contractors specifically.
Is that what it is? I actually don't know. He hasn't given me the brief.
It's not